Welcome to the Data Science Hangout. Hope everybody is having a great week. I'm having an extra great week because I'm calling in from Puerto Rico today. I'm Rachel Dempsey and I lead our pro community at Posit. Always want to put this plug out there that we have the Posit conference coming up in September, and we just extended the call for talks to April 7th. So I just want to make sure everybody knew that that call for talks got extended. But back to regular scheduled programming, the Data Science Hangout is our open space to chat about data science leadership, questions you're facing, and getting to hear about what's going on in the world of data across different industries. And it happens every Thursday at the same time, same place. So if you're watching this recording on YouTube later in the future, the link to add these sessions to your calendar will be in the details below. But every week we get to feature a different data science leader as my co-host to help lead our discussion and answer questions from you all. And so together we're all dedicated to making this a welcoming environment for everybody that joins. So we love to hear from everyone, no matter your level of experience or industry or area of work. It is totally okay to just listen in as well. But there's also 3 ways you can jump in to either ask questions or provide your own perspective too. So you can raise your hand on Zoom and I'll be on the lookout here. You can put questions into the Zoom chat and feel free to put a little star next to it if it's maybe loud where you are and you want me to read it. And then third, we also have a Slido link where you can ask questions anonymously. But thank you so much, Oscar, for joining us today as our co-host. Oscar Barufa is joining us as our featured leader. And Oscar, I would love to have you maybe jump in and introduce yourself and share a little bit about your role and I guess also something you like to do outside of work too.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. So it's really nice to meet everyone. I'm a senior analytics manager at a company called IDH. IDH is a international development organization that works on improving the sustainability of global supply chains, mostly in the agricultural and manufacturing sectors. And the team, now these development organizations are usually organized into sort of specific programs that you work on, and the program that I'm working on specifically works with businesses that work with smallholder farmers across the world. So you can think, maybe there's a company that's, getting maybe a local company in Africa that's sourcing potatoes for the local market. Maybe there's international coffee companies sourcing, coffee from all over the world, basically. And we work with those companies to improve the business model that interaction, let's say, between these companies that source produce and the farmers that produce it, right? Because often many of these farmers are, living quite far below the poverty line. They need a lot of services delivered to them and various things like that. So we work a lot with that. And then my team very specifically analyzes data from lots of different business models. And we're trying to understand which characteristics of these models improve outcomes for the profitability and sustainability, like economic sustainability of the company working with them, and the livelihoods of the farmers that are part of that interaction as well. That's a lot what we do. It's quite a small team as well. And I'd say, so we're basically, there's myself as an analytics manager, then there's 2 data analysts and a data engineer. And, a bunch of other people in the team. Let's have data people, that's the most direct. Outside of work, I'd say my time is split quite evenly between, I still do more data stuff, like I blog quite a lot about data-related, career-related topics. And whenever I get the time to do so, I also, one of my pride and joys is I created and I maintain this repository of R programming books. It's called the Big Book of R. And I recommend anyone to go have a look at it. It's got over 350 titles of just about any topic focused on R programming. And the remainder of my time, I've got some young children who are just at the age now, which is fantastic that they can start playing Mario Kart. The one's getting into Raspberry Pi. So I spent most of my last weekend trying to get a VJ screen to work with a Raspberry Pi, and I was not successful. And so this weekend, I think we're going to try find an old HDMI screen. But yeah, so that's all my free time basically.
That's awesome. Thank you, Oscar. And I was going to say, you are like a celebrity to us here. I feel like we've often shared the Big Book of R in the chat and a bunch of resources. So nice to have you here with us.
Thanks. Yeah, that's great.
And Oscar, I know we chatted a little bit about some discussion points that we wanted to bring up in the beginning as we wait for questions to come in. But one thing I wanted to ask you about is you mentioned like theory of constraints in visible work, along with the negative feedback loop in data work. And I was curious to have you kind of expand on that and share a little bit more about what that means to you.
Yeah, so you know, I've always managed, like a bit of the background here is I've always thought of myself as a competent project manager of projects, right? So it doesn't matter. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the best ever, but I'm pretty okay, I'd say. I get things delivered on time and usually within budget and under sometimes very difficult conditions. And so it really interests me a lot about the management of projects, right? And I wrote a very short book that's free to newsletter subscribers, but it can be free to anyone here as well, about project management fundamentals, specifically for data analysts, right? So I think about this type of thing a lot, and you know, I'm aware of you know, you get agile practices and a few others for managing projects, but I only very recently picked up this book, The Phoenix Project, which I'm sure probably many people here have read or some have heard. I'd highly recommend reading it. It's really, it's interesting from a few ways. One, in its delivery of teaching you theoretical material through the use of a novel. I'd never experienced something like that before, so that was just interesting on its own. But the second was that it introduced, so it's teaching you this concept, the theory of constraints, and how it relates to management of delivery of projects. That book itself is based on another book called The Goal, and The Goal was written in the 80s by, I can't remember his name exactly, but it's his surname's Goldblatt, I think. So here it's talking about the theory of constraints and what its implication is for how you manage work and how you assign resources and how you prioritize things basically. And why it's also interesting is because out of it and out of all this, you know, this idea of visible work also emerges. So these things are all like quite tightly interwoven, right? And I've developed this, I had a bit of an epiphany while reading The Goal, which is, and I think I need to read both again to like really dig in. But I had a bit of an epiphany that I'm hoping others recognize or they've seen the solution to, or people just like, oh yeah, you know, that is a thing, or, you know, am I just being a bit crazy here? So if you're not familiar with the theory of constraints, the very, very basics of it is that in any system of production, and it includes knowledge work, where work is being handed off between people, or like in a manufacturing setting, you know, like your car parts need to go through some machine at some point. Somewhere in this line of like the series of work events, one or more of the items, or one or more of the work sensors, as they call it, is your bottleneck. Your bottleneck is your constraints. And you'll get optimum performance out of the whole system if you design around the constraints. Like most people design around the full capacity of maximizing every single work sensor's capacity. And that causes all sorts of issues. I'm not going to recount the whole book, but the idea is that you basically scale everything down and keep the constraints fully, let's say, fully capacitated. And when I was reading it, I thought, okay, this is, it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of what they were saying, I recognize in my own kind of stuff I've learned in a reverse engineered kind of way. Like, I thought, yeah, you know, you don't want to maximize everyone's capacity and queues and workloads. And I thought, okay, this, so it was really like quite mind blowing, lots of what I was reading. But there's one thing that I now here's my epiphany, that the idea is that your constraint needs to be able to keep pulling work as it's available. And that's the whole idea of having visible work. You keep pulling work as it's available. And that work going through the constraints goes to other work centers. If there's any delay at the constraint or any lowering of capacity at the constraint, the problem is that you keep building, like each of those delays becomes cumulative. And that's why small delays, especially if your constraints somewhere near the front, or I can't remember the exact positioning, but you get very large delays later on. And that's why you'll see, I mean, you can see it when people are working, like small issues up front become someone else's massive nightmare down the chain, and they can just never catch up with work that was overwhelmed. It's because they're dealing with all this upstream cumulative delays, and the cumulative delays are super important to be aware of. But now their solution, I think, doesn't quite work for much of data work, that just in maximizing the capacity of your bottleneck. And I think the reason is, now I'm not talking, okay, so most of my data work has been around, you could say, like data analytical work, not productionizing machine learning systems. I think productionizing that is more akin to the DevOps environment, like an IT, someone designing and developing something and then handing over to someone else to deploy. That's more like how everything else usually works. But in a lot of data work that's very iterative, there's this huge problem in that most likely your bottleneck becomes a victim of its own delays, right? Because work often is not done. It's not just handed over. By necessity, you've got to hand over an analysis to someone, but that's not the end of it. We all know it comes back again. And a lot of the techniques that otherwise you might build in to reduce that rework, you know, in a software setting, you know, the whole theory of constraints talks about having feedback of information, but not of the work itself. The work itself isn't supposed to come back. We deal with the work coming back again, because you can't, a lot of the work you can't, especially like if you explore any kind of exploratory data analysis, you're doing kind of a research and you're not sure what the answer is going to be like, there's no way you can specify up front what the outputs should be. And no matter what you did at the first, like how good your specification was, you will still get a reaction from whoever's consuming it that they want more information, or a feedback that, you know, once your bottleneck has freed themselves, usually it's your analyst and that of the work, it comes back to, that's just the nature. The reason it comes back is because you were successful in the first place, I think, right? So now the only further bits I've gotten of how you might be able to deal with this is when you need to tweak the whole visible work and all of that system a little bit, is not to maximize your constraints. Your constraints also need slack to take up the rework that's coming back. And the reworking of work that comes back, you need to probably have some variable system that you'll, I mean, it's going to be very hard to get this to an exact science, but it'll be a function of how much have you already pushed out. So the more that you pushed out, the more variability you need to leave in your capacity until you're sure that this is not going to come back again. You'll need some way to know that this work ticket item is done, the project's done, the investment's been made, the whatever, and you're not going to get more coming back. So that was, you know, quite a big like aha moment that I had a little while ago, like, because I was thinking, how could we implement this? And I just saw it just wouldn't work. You know, it's like, let's say, true form.
It's
yeah,
interesting you just said that exact part there, because I was just reading that part in the Making Work Visible book. It's taking me a little bit to get through it, but we just talked about that part.
Yeah.
I see, Marlene, you had a follow-up question to what Oscar is talking about right now. Do you want to jump in?
Hi, Oscar. Thanks for the talk this morning. Well, it's morning where I'm at. Yeah, I'm just curious. You're talking about decisions that get compounded down the line, right? Especially in production systems. I'm just wondering, in your experience, how much of those constraints have happened from managers, supervisors, C-suite, anybody kind of above you on the totem pole, versus maybe lateral to you or below? Like roughly what percentage do you think you've seen that?
Good question. I know it would be hard. I think it's maybe more those who are dependent on the output to move forward at all are the ones who I would say maybe more excluding the C-suite or the exec decision maker, because my experience is, in a way, they don't seem to get impacted at all, other than still just moving forward without your information, right? So there's usually maybe like a lot of the work we do is often in as well in like publishing some kind of documents or a report of some kind. It's that person, that last one, maybe just before it gets to the C-suite, like in the theory of constraints language, and that's where it leaves the workshop, right? At that technical person's point of view. So I'd say I would maybe classify it as 100% laterally. Above that, from the like they need to go forward anyway, right? And that's also where it starts becoming important to manage these things better, because you don't want to become a like irrelevant work center service provider to the organization if your stuff is just never ready or good enough because of your delays or whatever. People are going to go ahead, right? They were going ahead before your data team was around, and they're going to keep going ahead without you. Maybe not for the better of the organization, but yeah, I'd say it's 100% laterally. That's for me at least where my focus has been.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah.
I see there was a question in Slido that was, what compelled you to start the Big Book of R?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I love talking about the Big Book of R, right? So that was it was about, so it was August 2020 that I launched it, and a little bit before that I'd just been bookmarking lots and lots of books, right? Especially then until, let's say, recently I was on Twitter a lot, and then I was all the time on Twitter, and people were sharing their books and that, and I just started bookmarking them. And I remember at once seeing my bookmarks folder had 80 of these R books, and I'd not seen a collection as such, and I just put out a call. Basically, I said, hey, anyone else is collecting? Like, how many do you have? Like, I was just trying to compare, like, and most people coming back with 5, 10, 25. I thought, wow, okay, actually I've somehow stumbled upon this massive repository. And then also it was one of those things I thought, oh, maybe I could just quickly do, put this together, because I'd also just actually written a book called Twitter for R Programmers, which was a collaborative effort with Ferrila van Son. And so I just had this, it was my first time using R Markdown, and right, so I quite like this idea of being able to make a book really easily. So then these things just came together. I thought, oh, I've got this massive thing, this great repository and this great collection. So that was the start of it. It's 80 books, and yeah, it's been a really fun project.
Thank you for that contribution to the community too. I know there's so many people who've used that resource.
There is actually a way you can help me, actually, everyone, if you want. I'm applying for a R consortium grant to basically upgrade the Big Book of R. And so I'm collecting basically, like, I know, like, it's a 2-minute survey where you can just like add your name and if you think this is a good idea or not, and it's part of the submission. So I think I've got about 110 responses. So if I can get like 150, then they can be like, really, wow, everyone really thinks this is a great resource. So I'll share it in the chat just now.
I just put it in the chat.
Oh, there you did.
Make sure.
Okay. Oh, you're ahead of me. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, fantastic. That would be great to get a few more statements of support. Thanks. Yeah.
Ben, I see you had asked a question in the chat a bit earlier. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, Oscar, first of all, thanks for all the contributions to open source, especially in the R environment. But what benefits have you seen from those contributions to your career overall?
Good question. Yeah, I'd say quite a few. One is just that it's yeah, how do I put this? there's a certain, this isn't the right word, but a certain like level of confidence that you get that it's like, wow, I'm doing something that gets validated quite quickly. Like a lot of our work, a lot of my work anyway, like there's so much stuff that I really like doing and it's really good, but who's going to know that it's good or bad other than me? It's like really difficult. My managers are like non-technical. If I make something that's like a really kind of terrible back end and everything's held jankily together, or it's like a super, super great system, it's hard for them to do that, right? So this is one way that's at least, it's great to get that kind of validation externally that, yeah, this apply the same kind of, let's say, level of effort and enjoyment in both elements. So at least this is a sample of my work that gets, a lot of thumbs up. So that's really great. It's also been quite useful in like getting a good overview of the R ecosystem and what people are using it for. And for example, like, I noticed, if you want to do stats or something, there's tons of books, like lots of them. If you want to do geographic information stuff, there's quite a few books as well. I work a lot with Excel in my daily work as well, lots and lots and lots. And there's Excel packages, no books about working with Excel, right? And so when I was doing quite a big project, and we do interact quite a lot with it, but I always knew that at some point we would be limited with what some of what R could do with Excel. And we did hit indeed those limits, but I was not surprised by them at all. That's a small thing, right? But had I not already had this big overview of everything that goes on in R, I may have walked a bit more blindly into that. And also meeting people has been really fantastic. So often people tag me on stuff and then I start recognizing authors, or I've been asked to review some book proposals as well. So, you'll get, especially from CRC Press, they do quite a lot of our books publications. So I've been asked to, look at some of those. It's quite nice to see what some people are working on way before it's released. Yeah, so it's been really fun all around. And I must say that it wasn't, I didn't think that would happen at the start. So this would be really cool, but it's been great fun.
Awesome. I see there was an anonymous question that I just wanted to make sure I covered. Somebody asked if there was a grant program to assist students who wish to attend POSIT conference. And I just wanted to let everybody know that Hannah shared in the chat that we do have an Opportunity Scholars program as well. And she put the link in there. But Jonathan, I see you have your hand raised. Do you want to jump in next?
Yeah, absolutely. And Oscar, thank you very much for co-hosting today. Rachel, thanks for putting this together as always. So one thing I felt that I could add to the conversation, I work in risk underwriting for the subprime, been doing it for about 6 years now, and it's a very flat organization, FlexShopper. And one thing I've learned in the theory of constraints, applying it here, is that priorities tend to shift very rapidly, and it really causes a lot of context switching amongst the team. And one way that I've introduced to help to control that is, even though it's not ideal, and hopefully maybe somebody else might be able to chime in on this later, is just having them create ticket stubs for everything they get. So in that effect, if they get a new priority saying, hey, get on this now, just put a ticket stub in, have it there, so that way when we're done, we can go back and figure out, all right, what were we doing over here? Oh, we were doing this, that, and the other thing. Here we go. And it doesn't eliminate the context switching, but it definitely helps to reduce it to the effect of you can almost pick up right where you left off, and it's helped to bring up the efficiency by around, I would say, 20% in terms of turning tasks around. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, great. Yeah, and the context switching as well. I felt it myself and I've seen it with others as well. If you can reduce context switching, output is massively, it's much better, but also people's job satisfaction is like way higher, and including my own, right? It's getting harder and harder to not context switch, but I have noticed even for myself that switching, even if it doesn't get you work out, put it this way, even if it didn't improve productivity, it improves work satisfaction. It's a huge retention gainer. But yeah, that's great, especially on the tickets. That's a good one. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you. Anna, I see you have your hand raised too. You want to jump in?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. So I'm going to piggyback off Jonathan's question, Oscar. So what have, uh, I like how you described the difference between how the theory of constraints affects it broadly and then how it affects us specifically in data science. So what are other methods that you've tried to help reduce that piece where, you know, we're repeating analysis and how, like, it kind of left me on a cliffhanger there. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are some things that you've experienced or things that you'd recommend? And then I have a second question, if I can, going back to the big book of R. I sometimes feel like there's things that I want to share, but I feel like because of the nature of my work, I have to kind of like hide what I'm doing. Not hide, but you know, there's company confidentiality, and I want to kind of like obscure that, then share. And that's just a tricky piece. And have you had to deal with that before? Has anyone here had to deal with that before, of wanting to share things they've done in R, but at the same time they're concerned about their company's data, not the company's data, but just that
Mhm.
process?
All right, so let me start with on the repeat analysis. I think for me, it's not to eliminate the repeat analysis. I think that repeat analysis is precisely the valuable bit of the work. If you're with me, like getting that, especially when there's some kind of domain expert, that back and forth to get something out there is really valuable. And it's actually that back and forth that I want to enable and protect, that both parties end up quite satisfied. Not to, I mean, there's a difference between, let's say, asking someone to redo work because the communication was faulty in the first place. That's a different problem. That's, you know, just getting the two working together well, or understanding definitions, or being clear on the output. But when things are going very well, that back and forth and repeat, I quite like to keep going, because then, you know, that for every iteration, there's more value being extracted out of the data we have. It's like, okay, cool. Now can we look at this? Now can we look at that? What about this? What about that? I really, so I'll try and encourage that. But it's like, how to still let that happen is by protecting the time of the person doing that work, that they don't feel like they have to juggle and do the switching, because then they don't want to also, you know, get into this back and forth and can we look at this, can we look at that? So yeah, it's more about, I sort of see it as there's like the stream of time that you're trying to protect, and as long as it's needed, it's got to be insulated until that's closed off. At some point it will come to an end. So yeah, so it's flipping it on its head a little bit there. On sharing work, yeah, so I can tell you what I do. I just don't share the stuff that I really want to. I just don't. I haven't found a very good way for me to be able to show a lot of what we're doing, but then I zoom out a little bit, like into other things that I find interesting. Like, for example, like I want to talk about some of the projects we do, but it's a bit difficult. I mean, I think at some points I might maybe able to do it more when we've got time, more time to do it. But I zoom out a little bit. And what else do I think is interesting? Like project management. How do you manage your team? What's, you know, I'm trying to think of some other things. Like I was quite interested in you know, some of these certifications that you see out there that, you know, I've seen many new data analysts are getting, and I wanted to see, okay, like the Google data analytics one, for example. I was super interested in assessing, like, what do I think about the content as a hiring manager? Now that's not NDA stuff for us, that's nothing. So I went and did it, and it's still interesting, and then that I wrote about. So it still scratches that itch of being able to share information, not always the exact information I want. What I have seen someone else do is they took, for something they worked on with us, they did a demo on their own like toy project to test it, and that's how they learned before they came and did it. And then that's how they pitched us, like, no, we'd really like to do this type of thing on your project, or on this project we're working on. But they've just done that, their demo of it publicly on a toy data set. So they still also got that kind of scratching that itch, right, of being able to share it a little bit. But yeah, but I'm keen on if anyone else has been able to, you know, come up with some cool NDA protection back in whatever, you know, Yeah, what would you say, like I can't think of the word now.
I
Okay.
see, Marlene, you had some ideas of what you're working on.
Say
You
what?
have-
What happened?
I saw you said you had some ideas of how you were sharing this like public facing portfolio. So I was curious if you wanted to share maybe how you were doing that.
Oh, sure. So for those of you who don't know, I work in agriculture, right? And some of the projects we work on here, for example, are food safety related, where we're showing lab tests of products. So like a piece of lettuce that gets sent to a lab, and then it gets homogenized and tested for foodborne pathogens like E. coli. And then we'll show those on a map, positive or negative. By the way, when you see a positive on a map, it doesn't mean anything terrible. It just means that something lived there, right? An organism. But anyway, my point is that maps can very easily be misconstrued. So I did a mock-up for this. It's like right now, nationally blowing up, this food safety data sharing project that my trade organization put together. But we went from the prototype that I built in R to having a subcontractor redoing it in basically like a click dashboard, which, by the way, I feel is not as clean and as beautiful as some of the like leaflet packages. That's just my personal opinion, but it gets the job done. But anyway, I really want to take that prototype of the map that I built and make it public facing, but there is no way like people will come slamming on my door if I have positives and negatives on a map. So my thought was instead to do something like, here are where commodities are located, because that's not necessarily sensitive. And I would have to take a public data set. Those of you who are asking about public data sets, there are a ton out there, by the way. It's just a matter of finding a good one for your use case. Like you can literally just Google public data sets. Academia has their hands on tons of them, so they're definitely out there. But I've taken things like, feel free to laugh at this. I know that because I used to work with the Water Board of California, that they have testing for streams, like certain fish or bioassays that are done there. And I've taken those and just jig them, like move them a fraction of a GPS point up or down, and just been like, here's my new point, and we're gonna fake that here's where lettuce is grown or radishes are grown. So you might see like a radish grown in the middle of a stream, but hey, I just put a giant caveat along the top that this is meant for demonstration purposes, it's fake data, etc. But I'm basically going through that whole process for everything that I've ever built, which is not a huge portfolio because I feel like most of the things I've built are pretty action packed in like a single tool. So there's a lot of hours packed into a single tool, but I hope that kind of makes sense on like some of the ways you can de-identify some of your data. I think it's more important to show the end visualizations and to also have a page that kind of chronicles the process a bit, so they understand all the work that goes in rather than just here's your snapshot. Because we do live in an age where people are a little underwhelmed now, thank you CGI and great movies, by beautiful visualizations. So you have to let them know like there are a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into this, right? So anyway, there's my 2-second spiel on how to kind of maybe de-identify some of your work.
Thank you, Marlene. Yeah, that's such a great point too, because I was even just talking about that like internally at Posit, that if we show an example that's using like empty cars, it's not going to look the same to like a finance company. Like they want to, even if it's play data, they want to see something that actually is relevant to their industry too. Oh, another question for you, Oscar. We talk a lot about this like shift from being an individual contributor to moving into management. And something I've seen you write about before is like hiring to replace you versus hiring for the skills you don't have. And just wanted to open up the discussion about that too.
Yeah, so this was I'll give credit here to I think his name's Michael Kaminsky from the locally optimistic Slack group. It's also highly recommended for anyone who's on this call to join that as well. But yeah, so it was so when you're getting into a management position, at some point you need to start hiring people and a team around you. And hiring is actually very different depending at different points in your career. Like I thought that it had been the same because I had done hiring before, even when I wasn't a manager, right? And there does actually come this split that I think takes some people by surprise the first time it starts happening, because it certainly took me by surprise. So before you're like, let's say, a manager, if you are growing in your career and you do happen to be hiring someone, you are hiring someone most likely to replace you, like a more junior version of yourself, and you're going to train them, and you're going to, you are the expert of some level, and you're going to bring them up to your level or something like that, right? And so, and also you feel, I suppose, in a way, quite secure in what it is you're doing, because you've already got much more knowledge than them, and you are bringing them up to your level. And so you feel very confident in answering the questions and mentoring them and all of that. But it becomes very different if you're starting to hire for skills you don't have. So for example, I don't have a stats background. I don't have a data engineering background. I don't have even that much actually of an analyst background. I'm sort of like a market analyst, but not a data analyst per se. And when you start hiring these team members into your team, these are for skills I don't have. It becomes much more difficult for me to also assess, are they good or not? And also very quickly, like it's kind of weird. Like I first started, like I think most people start, I was trying to learn as much data engineering and data science and data as I could to try and just stay at least up with them. But there's no ways that you can do that. And actually it's then the sort of click happens and you're like, okay, wait, actually my job's not to be the experts of all of the people in my team. I am just mostly really a glorified facilitator of their work. And if I know more than them, that's probably actually a problem. Like we can't have me be, with my 10% of time on all of these different vast fields, be still the expert in everything. That's not going to be great. And that's quite a different switch. And when it's I think it takes a bit of getting used to start not understanding bits of what it is, then the tables turn a little bit, right? I'm in some ways the non-technical manager of technical people, although I'm kind of technical myself, but they'll talk about things and I also have to be like, whoa. Then I start also clicking a lot of like what my directors and execs feel like. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, you're getting into way too much detail. Like I can't do anything with, what you're telling me, but then also gets much better, right? In trying to assess like, okay, what's the options? Like my role mostly is to try and not just prioritize work, but try and help them uncover like where it is work needs to be done, or if there's a dilemma, try and break down, okay, well, what's, if we go this direction, how bad will it be if this happens, or how good will it be if this happens? Can we weigh risks like this? Or I can convey to them as well, where things just aren't a priority, because no matter what they do or stress about here, it ain't going to matter later, right? So it's quite a different ballpark. And I think it probably happens the first time you hire someone that's not a replacement for you. It's in addition to your team. So it can catch you by surprise.
Any other tips for us if like we're navigating like that first hire where you don't have the same skill set as them, like how you communicate with them or in your one-on-ones with them?
I'm very clear that up front that I am not the skilled person that they will be able to come to for XYZ technical thing. I just don't have that, and they can't expect that of me. But I am quite clear about what I can provide, and what my role is, and that I am interested still in their technical development, and in but they need to guide me about what they think, where they think they should go. Right? They're going to tell me some gobbledygook new thing like, okay, and then I'm like, okay, I just need to assess, this is what I'll need to assess if this is going to be good or not. So I suppose being much more like I'm very clear about my thought processes and my decision making. So I do that very vocally. Like if I'm weighing up things, I'm talking out loud, Like, okay, if we do this, then this, then I do. So, but it's not this black box for them about, you know, they gave me some information and then I just gave a decision back. I think that's also been quite helpful in getting our communication to work quite well. Yeah, especially with people with different backgrounds.
I feel like career development is such a big part of being a manager, but I don't know if it's necessarily something that managers are always taught. And I'm wondering, like how do you learn about growing your team's career and having those conversations with them?
Yeah, I think in one way, now for many this might sound blasphemous, but in one way, I try and take the company out of this equation. Totally, you know, not just our immediate needs. And I think, okay, what's going to be really great for this person's career in general? Like if I bump into you 5 years or 10 years down the line, in a selfish way, it would be fantastic if your career was just going swimmingly, right? It's good to have contacts whose careers are just really flying. And then I sort of work backwards from that. And I say, okay, you know, I think, you know, would this be better for you? Would that be better for you? Or, you know, don't worry too much. Like if you could do anything, what would you do? And then, of course, you need to try and whittle it down and say, could we apply some of that now in what we're doing? Or do you see an opportunity? Is it something that really interests you? That really helps a lot. But actually, I found another way as well is to let people go with their curiosity as well. And I think that's one thing that at least I can appreciate coming from some kind of technical background is actually most of my career developments has been from just the bits that I was curious about that I couldn't explain to someone exactly like what was the ROI on this thing going to be. I don't know. It's just sort of you get a sense that something's may pay off. Even if it doesn't, you're going to learn quite a lot. So I try and give a lot of room for, you know, if you want to go try that, just, you know, go do it. Type of thing, you know, I sort of trust that some way you'll benefit and will benefit, whether it's successful or not. Try and make a lot of room for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I go over to some of these anonymous questions too. And somebody had asked, I've acquired skills in project management and program evaluation. Could you elaborate more on the application of project management to data analytics?
Yeah, as data is becoming, you know, used in organizations a lot more, and you know, if you come from let's say a digitally native organization, that's you may not realize this, right? But coming from any kind of traditional organization, that's everyone that, let's say, not a digital producer of some kind, data is becoming more and more infused daily into work, right? Sometimes not always at the pace we like, but it is. And data as products are becoming more ubiquitous. So someone wants to develop a tool that assesses something, or a Shiny dashboard, or any other dashboard, or data starts moving back and forth between places, and these things need to be managed, whether in whole or just in chunks. And I think that's where the let's say project management application from a data perspective comes, and will keep growing as companies start adopting that kind of data as a product mindset. Like, oh, it's not just this like inert data, is not just like, yeah, like this inert pile of stuff that we occasionally will pick from when we need it. It becomes this like more living, integral part of work that someone needs to maintain, someone needs to have a vision for. And then naturally projects around that grow because you want to upgrade things, you want to add new capabilities. So that's where I see it's heading, right? And that's partly also why I thought, you know, this data project management for data analysts book is useful, because a lot of data people find themselves suddenly managing a project like, oh, I've got to get the comms people involved for the, you know, I don't know, the fonts on the front end of my thing that I'm about to publish, or I need to, you know, talk to, you know, just more and more people as data starts touching more bits of the organization. You got to, you know, align a lot of people around some deliverable.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love all these packages and resources that are being shared in the chat right now too. It looks like there's a lot of great resources on making dummy data sets and synthetic data. Another anonymous question. Actually, first, let's jump to your question, Sal. I see you asked a question in the chat. Do you want to jump in? And I can ask it if you want to jump in with more context. But the question was, at a certain level, I feel that managers are told, let your employees be autonomous, but simultaneously managers and chain of command have very specific expectations. Do you have experiencing balancing autonomy and directing towards a desired result?
Yeah, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I mean, I suppose maybe just personally, I've been quite lucky. I've always had a lot of autonomy. But I think autonomy now, okay, I'm not talking about, like, let's say toxic workplaces, right, where people are micromanaging and there's power plays and all that. Let's just say there's at least some level of maybe autonomy being earned, perhaps. Let's say in those situations where you really could be given a lot of autonomy to achieve your goals, but it's still not happening. It's earned in the sense that it's going to sound so cliche, right? But really understanding like what the business is trying to achieve really helps, because then most people, in my experience, most people don't want to micromanage. They want to just let people run with things, right? And deliver results. And I think that kind of autonomy not just comes from understanding the business, but I found a lot of it's about being very empathetic, especially about those higher up who are accountable for the outputs of whatever it is. So, and what that means, what I mean by is I often put myself in the shoes of those who are saying they want autonomy or they need these results, whatever. And I really think, okay, what are they, if I was them, what am I trying to deal with, right? I've got, I didn't sleep the night before, my kids were up, and I've got all these emails that are in here, and and now I'm about to send an email that says, I can't do this without these resources. I'm going to be like, that's not going to land. Or, and that's how it sort of, is maybe one small way in doing it is when you sort of practice that kind of empathetic aspect, then it's helped me a lot phrase things. Okay, well, what's the most helpful I can still be in order to move things along, even if it, like, something went wrong, or and then that's really helped me a lot, because then I can say, right, well, I've also done the work of really trying to understand what it is we're trying to achieve, and what the trade-offs are up higher, the higher up we go. And then I try and frame things in those same like the alternatives that there are available, right? And then I also show that, I've thought about, if we do X, we're not going to reach this, but it'll maybe do Y. But if we do this, it's going to do that. And I recommend also always say what you recommend. Most, these the higher up you go, there's decision fatigue like crazy. It really helps to say, I've thought about all these trade-offs and this is what I recommend. So I can't say if this will definitely always help, but it always feels like the times that I haven't really put in the effort to do that kind of work, then things don't often go as smoothly always as I'd like, right? Then I get the answers that I would prefer maybe not to get, or the response lands badly. Yeah.
I wanted to put a plug out here for your website as well, because I came across an article that you wrote that I found very interesting on dealing with difficult stakeholders.
Yeah.
And I would love to give some time to that topic, and for people who might be on the call who are hearing like, we're too busy to go forward with this project, or this is way down on our priority list, like what are some things they can do to get past that?
Yeah. So that post is like a collection of every let's say approach that I could think of that I've employed to make working with stakeholders easier in some way. And they'll work in different contexts, but I think that for me the most effective has always been canvassing. I think I put 8 there or 9, I can't remember, but canvassing. And most of you probably already do this, or you're not sure it's called canvassing or whatever, but you know, when you're like getting the buy-in, especially when there's a group or any kind of committee or any joint decision, getting their buy-in before the actual public-facing meeting is really the only way to get really good progress. And what's difficult about it is it's extremely time-consuming, because of course the bigger the committee or whatever is, the bigger you've got to go. And a key to that is that you know, trying to understand people's incentives, like politically in the organization, whatever, the incentives for accepting things or not. And, you know, so when you're trying to set up these one-on-one meetings and that, those you want to keep quite small, because the best thing I've found is people need to be able to back out of things. Like if you put people in a corner and you want their, you know, that's what doing publicly in the group is not a good idea, right? If you're trying to get people's, you want to give them wiggle room, and doing the one-on-ones beforehand, and not following those up in writing, right? I mean, unless you're already in some kind of combative situation and you need to do it, you need to do it. But this is ideally all the legwork you do way ahead of time, that you understand where they're coming from, what they can agree to, what they can't agree to. And, you know, it's great if you can go around and you understand what's their main concerns or what it is that they're looking for from this project or from this whatever, and you build that all in beforehand, that ideally you've got the agreements. Then by the time it comes for the group agreement, everyone's already agreed. And you will have to sometimes live with this uncertainty of some people not agreeing, but they will at least not object to the work or object to what it is you're doing. And you know, sometimes I found that was also for me in the first few times I had to do this kind of thing. I wanted the certainty, right? So of everyone giving me the yes before I go and spend all this time. But the reality is you won't get it from everyone. But for me, you know, no objection is as good. And usually then after the thing's got a bit of momentum, the objections don't, they're too late then, right, later. But a lot of people, they want the ability to back out. And sometimes I think if that's what they need to be able to let this thing go forward, then you just got to be pragmatic about it, right? And just say, great, that's as good as it's going to get. Yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to, as we come to the top of the hour here, I just want to make sure if there are questions that I didn't ask yet, that people have an opportunity here to raise your hand or repost something in the Zoom chat. One that was over on Slido is going back to the Big Book of R, and somebody had asked, I'm not finding the question here, but essentially, like, how do you keep up with all of the links and make sure that they're not dead, because so many of those books or websites are changed over time?
Yeah, I'd say actually, I think the magic of version control and book down actually means that links don't break that often. For a start, people republish back to the same point. So yeah, it's actually not been too difficult to keep that kind of thing going. You know, occasionally what's also quite, I suppose, because I'm also fairly like reachable, if someone finds a dead link, they just tag me and say, hey, this link's dead, right? So I'm not the one actually doing the maintenance on that per se. And very many people are very kind. They'll also say, this isn't working, this is a new link, so my work's super easy, right? So I'd say that's kind of where, you know, people just being, you know, really helpful helps. And let's say keeping up just in more general of adding books, so that is a bit more of a challenge because there's always quite a lot being added. But I have very recently also drafted in some help from Niels Olsen. You'll see in one of my updates. He's a fellow data nerd in Germany. He very kindly volunteered to help. So the last couple of batches he's been doing, because it takes actually quite a lot of time to look at the entries, because I want to make sure that it is an R book. It does look kind of relevant. It, where does it go? What should the introduction be? That takes a bit of time to do all of that. So I've drafted in a bit of help because it was getting a bit much. Yeah.
Great. Another question I realized I had missed from earlier, somebody asked, do you have recommendations for useful resources for beginners in R, even beyond books? They said, I'm overwhelmed with the available resources and unsure where to start.
Yeah. I point to where probably most people would is R4DS book by Hadley, and I always forget the second author. That's how it goes, right? And then there's also a video, if you're wanting a video course. So actually on the Big Book of R, there's a Big Book of R / Start Here, I think, which is indeed, if you are very new, they're the two resources. One's the book and one's a series of free videos from R for the Rest of Us that you can check it out. So, but I mean, I'd say I'm a not a fantastic R programmer at all, right? I'm just not that fantastic. But what's great is you don't even need to be very fantastic to get a lot of use and power out of it. And I'm 20 times more productive. So I think if you're a beginner from R, I did half of the R4DS book, and it's been insanely useful. Just the first 15 chapters or so. I've done basically everything I do now is just from that. So you don't need to learn everything. Just learn a couple of things and get going. Yeah.
I'm trying to copy and paste the Big Book of R Start Here. So there it goes. For some reason, Zoom wasn't letting me paste for a second. And Andy, yeah, thanks for the recommendation on the Posit Cloud Primers. A great resource too, if you wanted to share that.
We had a team go through Posit Academy this last winter, and we had two folks that had never programmed in R before when they signed up for Academy. So those cloud primers were super helpful for folks to come up to speed.
Oh, cool. Okay. Nice.
Trevor, I see you just put a question in the chat. You want to jump in?
Hi everyone. I'm in sunny Jamaica. Just to let you know.
Okay.
But I do work for a multinational firm in Jamaica. IGT. If you look up us, you can look on the stock exchange and you'll find us, right?
Okay.
All right. So I've been watching the conversations around the very new shiny toy, ChatGPT, and even Bard from Google, right? I've been watching the conversations about what we think, and it's still evolving.
Yeah.
About what this will mean for us. Will we be writing code or not? So I just wanted to get your thoughts on how do you see those applications affecting what we do?
Yeah.
Positively or negatively?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, we'll see if what the test of time will tell us. I think it'll be a useful tool, and but we will soon find out what its limitations are. I'm mostly worried that it's not going to be as cool as we think. That's it's not going to be as useful and revolutionary. Mostly, I'm not worried that it's going to be so going to take over everything. And that, I suppose, because I saw AR and VR was going to change everything, and then it sort of fizzled out, and then I saw blockchain was going to change everything, and that kind of there's a couple of useful things for it. And then I saw NFTs were going to change everything, and then that's kind of died, in my opinion. Thank goodness. So, and then crypto was going to change everything. And then, the difference is ChatGPT. I've used it a few times and I found it useful, at least the version I have. We've got well, it's on my wish list anyway, to use it for some elements of our work, especially we've got a lot of contextual information. So I like the idea of being able to retrain it on our own content and then use it in some very specific applications of trying to summarize some stuff. And I think, if it does very, very well, it'll be useful. History shows it's going to fizzle out to a couple of other use cases, or I really hope it does fantastically well, because I think what my feeling is, it's gonna, if it does fantastically well, it's gonna it's going to ease a lot of the low level work that is not of enough value to hire someone for, or to farm out to someone. We just live with the mess, or not doing the summary, or not drafting this thing or whatever. We just kind of deal with it because it's not it's not enough value, and then it will be fantastic, right? And I think on balance it's will be very useful if it's very good. So we'll see, but we'll see what happens.
Okay, thank you.
I'm hopeful that it's going to be good. Yeah.
And Trevor, it looks like a lot of people want to come work with you in Jamaica as well.
They want to come to Jamaica, that is.
Yes, at least come to Jamaica. Yes.
You're invited.
Well, thank you so much, Oscar, for joining and sharing your insights with us. This has been so fun. If people want to stay in touch with you, is the best way through LinkedIn or Twitter?
Yeah, so
Mastodon?
I'd say probably LinkedIn is the one I would check the most these days. I'm just trying to find my LinkedIn. If I'm like checking messages. Thanks. Yeah, please everyone do connect with me. I've seen some connection requests come through. I'll also post it here. And
Awesome.
I'd say there, and then also if my newsletter as well. I mean, if you're kind of interested in that, I always read any email replies to that. But yeah, probably LinkedIn's the best these days. So thanks. And this hour went by so fast.
It goes by very quickly, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to put one more plug at the end for the Big Book of R and the forum that you mentioned to get
Yes.
support. And I am
Thanks so
trying
much.
to grab that real quickly. Here it is. So I just put that form there if anybody is interested in helping out there too. But thank you so much, Oscar. That was great.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Have a great rest of the day, everybody.